Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April 1st meeting of the North Kingstown School Department Building Subcommittee. We're passing around our attendance sheet, so please sign in. That way we have that for the minutes. We do have more than a quorum, so we're in good shape there. The first item on the agenda is public comment. I know I have a few members here of the public. If you have signed up, if you want to please go to the podium, and if you have, anyone would like to say a few words? Okay, sounds good. The second item is approval of the meeting minutes from our March 7th meeting. I'm sure hopefully you had a chance to review that. Is there a motion in order to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I will now turn this over to the superintendent for the next few items on our agenda.
So the next item is to go over the timeline for the proposals from Perkins Eastman. As everyone knows, we had asked Perkins Eastman to put together 4 proposals for us regarding a new build of new middle schools, plural, 2, 1, a new build of DMS, a new build of Wickford Middle with the cost estimates for those, as well as renovations for DMS and renovations for Wickford Middle with cost estimates. So we have a timeline. When we signed the contract with them, that was approved through school committee. It was a 4 to 6 week timeline of getting information. They're getting it to us sooner than that, but we were unable to have that for tonight's meeting. So what I have in front of you is the timeline of when we're going to have everything from them. We had a meeting with them the end of last week to review this and really stress the importance of getting this information as soon as possible. So I'll go over this with you so you understand what we're going to receive and when we're going to receive that. So I'll just start with today, which was April 1st. We did the test pits. That was also approved for us to complete the test pits for Wickford Middle School for the field, so that way we would know that that field could be used, because it was still questionable. Even after the phase 1 environmental study, there were still questions of it being used as a junkyard with maybe automobiles under there. So that was done today. We'll have a verbal report out for the next agenda item. Tuesday, April 2nd, by the end of the day, we will receive a preliminary renovation concept for Wickford Middle School. If you notice, the cost is not with that. Costs are coming up later because they have to send everything to their estimators to get that information. On Thursday, April 4th, we'll get a preliminary new build concept for Davisville Middle School. I'm sorry, and I skipped one looking up here. The preliminary new build concept for Wickford Middle School was provided to us last Friday. The preliminary renovation building concept for Davisville Middle School will be to us by the end of the day on Tuesday, April 9th. And on Wednesday, April 10th, the administrative team, we'll have a meeting with Perkins to review those concepts with them, so that'll take place next week. And then on April 12th, which this timeline says Monday, but that's Friday, we'll receive the estimates. And we'll review those estimates with Perkins Eastman and along with Jacobs, our project manager. So getting all of that information to us to review, we did put an email out to this group here for the building committee proposing another meeting so that way we can discuss that together, because we really need that information to move forward. We really can't prematurely make a recommendation tonight without having that. So we had put out a request of either April 17th or April 18th for our next meeting. And at that meeting, we'll be able to review everything, and the goal of that meeting would be to make a recommendation to bring forward to the school committee. I have proposed that Monday, April 22nd, and it's proposed right now for the school committee to schedule a work session specific to school construction, facility needs, and future bond. And that way everything could be discussed in a possible vote at that meeting. We also have a school committee business meeting on April 24th, and that way we can make a recommendation to the town council. And there's a town council meeting on Monday, April 29th. Does say vote here, that was from last week, talking with them, but we can have a discussion of that if it's on that day or a different day.
So I have a question, and then I just have a comment on April 29th.
Mhm.
So the question is, do we know if have we just determined the 17th or 18th yet?
So it looks like, when I talked to Jules, it looks like the 18th, majority of the people said 18th for.
Excellent.
So I was gonna bring that up when we
Good.
discuss our next meeting.
And then the second issue is, just to let everyone know, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Councilperson Page yet, so, but April 29th is a town council meeting. There's not another town council meeting until May 20th. However, I had talked to both House and Senate leadership, and if there's a desire of this town, school committee and town council, to put in a question for enabling legislation, they feel that they could work tirelessly to make sure that North Kingstown gets that to happen, provided that we get something to them by mid-May. That's very late in the session, because they're probably getting out at the beginning of June, so they're gonna just try to fast-track us for this far. So we're looking at mid-May, which means that if the council is uncomfortable with voting on the 29th, which may be the case, because they're gonna get this for the first time on the 29th, discuss it, and may not be able to digest it and actually put together a vote, then they'll either go on the 29th, or we'll call for a special meeting on either May 6th or May 13th. So I just wanna, those are our options. So the time does work if we can get all this done by then.
Thank you. Any questions about this timeline?
When's the town council meeting prior to that?
There isn't any. So April 3rd, this Wednesday is a public hearing,
Yep,
and because of school break, there's not another council meeting until April 29th.
okay.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Just one comment, Ken, the 22nd is Passover, I believe, so just something to be aware of.
Yes, you are right. When is the start of Passover?
Mhm.
Yeah, that Monday.
Yeah, so that's not probably the best choice for an evening meeting.
Just to expand on something that the superintendent and I have talked about, we can get a placeholder for the April 29th council meeting, but any materials would probably have to be into the town clerk by the end of the day on the 24th. That's probably worst case scenario, so that would be the Wednesday. If you want it as part of backup, because the agenda is posted on the 25th. So the town clerk will use the 25th to get that done. If it's not needed for backup, we can always just get it on the agenda and then send it to the council over the weekend, but it may not be part of the backup, that's all.
What's the timeline as far as with the person that does the actual bond language for the town? What kind of timeline do they need?
So that's one of the reasons why we're probably gonna need a second meeting, because if the school committee passed something on the 23rd or 23rd, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
gave to the town on the 24th, we put the placeholder in. Even if the council wanted to vote that night, I'm not sure if the bond council would have time to put together the proper language over that weekend. Plus, they need some direction from the council as to what the bond language should be. So, I mean, he's good, I'm gonna say 72 hours. So again, if the council is interested in getting some options, we could probably do it that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then get it to the council on the Monday. But it wouldn't be part of the backup, so I don't wanna speak for the council, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a special meeting on May 6th.
Thank you.
And one, again, not to be, I don't wanna belabor this, one of the reasons is that I know there's a concern of all of us, not just the council, but the councils have publicly shown some concern about what the question will read, how big is the capital, will there be a middle school, and I know there's a real concern about, I guess, the various school districts going out to bid, and the bids are coming in, not only are they getting just one bid, but the bids are coming in much greater than they ever anticipated. And the reason is, we all knew this, because the state has put together a deadline, so now supply and demand. The deadline is all these projects have to come in, there's only so many contractors, so they're just getting premium prices for everything, on materials. So there may be, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak for the council, but I know there's a concern over what the price of the project would be. Can we live within the budget? Is this something that we want to consider years down the road? So I think they're gonna need some time.
Yeah, as Ralph said, I know that Greg is concerned about that, because he sent me something about construction projects, and just, I'll be more than happy to pass it around, but it just shows the amount of increase as to what's coming up here within the next year, and what you can't see, or with the little graph, it goes up.
And what is that graph of?
It's basically the total value of selected proposed construction projects in Rhode Island. So it has more than just schools in it, but it is just how many contractors do we have in Rhode Island who then can work on the projects.
It was my understanding though that because we're not we're not under the same timeline pressure, for lack of a better word, as other towns, because we're not gonna be getting the additional reimbursements, that we don't have that same, must be, we have a little bit more leeway, because I believe a bond would have to be paid, started and paid out. There's a pretty long time frame, correct?
Yes.
If
So
a bond gets approved?
yes, I'd have to talk to Mario. I know a town bond,
Yeah,
we're still sitting on a town bond
Yeah.
from 2007.
yeah, so that's
School bond,
not-
I'm not sure if there's a time frame on it.
yeah, so can maybe check on that as far as time frame, because I do agree, but I think, waiting on that process is not the same as what we were talking about a year ago, and so I would just check on that piece of it, because I do think
Right,
that
because
it's a
there's
little bit different.
other districts that are going in from bonds that were approved from this last election
Yeah.
that are in, and they've been approved for the additional reimbursement.
Yeah.
So they're
It's
be
a different
ahead
game.
of us of trying to get bids out there and get the projects
Yeah.
completed. If we go out for bond in November, putting bids out, we'd be talking about the winter, early winter, that January timeframe of going out.
In theory, but what I'm saying is if for some reason the bids come in really high, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't mean that the bond just disappears. There's a certain time frame that it's available and being able to use, and so being able to use it, so it's not,
Right, and if we had to go back out because we put a bid out
Yeah.
that's too high, we could always go back out too. That's correct.
yeah, I was saying the opposite though, is that you could wait until the situation,
Could do that too.
yeah, so there's some options, so just maybe checking on that time frame.
Alright, the next agenda item that we have on here is the update on the Wickford Middle School test pits, and Mr. Boardman has a verbal report from you this morning.
Yes, so I'd like to start off by publicly thanking Mr. Adam White and his team for mobilizing quickly and digging the 3 pits today. We did have a representative from Park Corporation who was on site to do the observation, and we never expected them to be able to produce a report tonight, but they did share with us general observations. And so I'm going to read this verbatim as it was sent to me. It is my understanding that the test pits were completed today as planned, and as expected, no indications of a landfill were observed, and no unusual characteristics / man-made materials, odors, or staining were observed. They did also collect a composite of the fill material and a composite of the native soil, as well to grab a sample of each for VOCs. Adam, is there anything, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anything that stood out to you as you dug today? No.
When will the full report come?
It does take a couple weeks generally. Not that anybody has any questions. There were 3,
Once we
yeah,
get
there were
that
3
written
pits.
report, we'll make sure that we
That's right, I'm not sure
share it
everybody's
and
aware.
post it, so.
But there were 3 pits that were dug. Where did we land? Somewhere between 6 feet on the first one and then down to, how deep did the last one go?
The last one, we're down 8.5 feet, I wanna say, and we didn't hit water or anything on that pit, but yet, the first pit was what, 3
Three
feet
before we
of
hit
water
water.
or so? And then we have either a very large boulder or ledge in the second pit, and that was roughly 3-4 feet. So, pits were okay, they weren't terrible.
And we did see both fill and then get to native soil on each.
Yes, thank you.
I'm just gonna slide it.
Yeah, I saw the coffee tea in Metro here.
So, and that's more so that someone doesn't step in it and sink to their shin or knee in mud, so it was, as we can all imagine, I guess everyone's front yard is quite wet out there.
But visually, you're pretty comfortable with what you saw? Visually?
Visually, it looked like dirt to me.
Good,
Nothing out of the ordinary.
which is pretty much in line with Pa's report, they just want to be cautious, that's great.
So that's good that we have that verified. We'll get a written report. Once we have that written report, we'll share it up with the committee. We'll post it on our website as well, so others can see that. So that is good news for us, you know,
And
if we're able to move forward.
one more thing to say, just so we can say it, we did 3 test holes in the whole field. So is there a likeliness that we might have missed something out there, a larger piece of ledge or higher groundwater? Yes, there is a possibility. So just so we're all aware, God forbid somebody comes back later and says, hey, listen, over here, there's only 1 foot to groundwater. It's because we had 3 designated locations to dig. So that's all.
And those designated locations were based off of the recommendation of the architects, based off of where they're seeing where the building itself may land on that site.
Thank you, and thank you for your help with that. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any questions, comments? All right, the next agenda item, let me put this on here, this is gonna help us move forward with recommendations that we will make to the school committee regarding, future bond, future school facility improvements, and what the costs for those possible projects will be, is to look at the capital improvement plan that we have put forward. We have this prioritized in importance based on groups of work that needs to happen, and want the building committee to look at this one more time. We want to be able to have options to put out there. For example, if we're putting a recommendation out there to build new middle school plus do renovations across the district, we want to make sure that we're putting out there what those renovations are, but also having an option to think of cost. How much money are we going to be requesting? How much money are we able to request that would be approved by voters, so we can do work moving forward? And do we need to put forward some capital improvements now, and then a few years later, other capital improvements to go up? And that's, for us to go through this and make that recommendation based on needs across the district of what needs to happen now and what could happen if we had to wait on some of these projects for a few years out. Do you wanna just kind of go over the groupings of how we put that together?
Certainly, so, and I will tell you this was done intentionally, roofs are on the top of the list. So the first 3 pages are roofs. This document does not include Wickford Middle School. It does include every other school other than Wickford. So the first 3 pages are roofs, and again, this is all broken out from our original document, so it would be, looking at tying it over 5 years. Doesn't necessarily have to be the case. We can group roofs together to try and get a few more done, but also note that this has an FY25 start date, which, with the bond not being voted on until hopefully November, may make some of the FY25 projects and all the projects on this document have to shift 1 year to the right. May not be the case in every aspect, but, so if you're looking at dollar values, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
The other thing I just wanted to note, because you did say this doesn't include Wickford Middle School, we intentionally did not include Wickford Middle School on here, because we know Wickford Middle School is one of the schools with the greatest need across the district, and something has to be done. And I will say, as a superintendent, I think the amount of work that needs to happen with that, it's gonna require a bond. It's not just going in and making a few fixes to that building. So this is just looking at renos right now of all the other schools.
So your first 3 pages are roofs, followed by, and it looks like the heading didn't carry over. On the bottom of the 3rd page, the heading is for ADA, so starting on page 4 and continuing on is all ADA related work. So going back to roofs, over the 5 years, we were looking at just under $30 million for roofs, 29,460,000. The ADA upgrades, the entire package of them, approximately $360,000. The next category are the security vestibules, at just over $200,000. Under the fire alarms, because this was taking our existing CIP, there are 2 fire alarms noted, one for Hamilton, one for Forest Park. We're actually in the design stage for the Hamilton fire alarm, so hoping that this will be able to become a completed item, as we're attempting to use funds we currently have to complete this Hamilton fire alarm project. So I'm not sure we would necessarily have to consider that for a bond, but I didn't want somebody to ask a question, why did that disappear off the list? So it is still on the CIP list, but is a project we're currently planning. Then after the fire alarms, you start going into HVAC work, which is gonna be a number of pages. The HVAC subtotal is just over $16 million. Electrical. It's just over $326,000. Plumbing. Just over $421,000. The next category that the heading got cut off is interior renovations. Interior renovation. So those are all the upgrades to the interior classrooms. I know we've got, in this section, there are walls at Stony Lane, Quinnesset, Fish and Cove, a lot of media center upgrades, including the gymnasium and media center at both Fish and Cove and Forest Park. This section is just under $39 million. Windows and doors. Just over $3.3 million across the district. Building envelope in there, in here. And similar to the Hamilton fire alarm, there is one project at Hamilton, the remove and replace concrete masonry veneer of the courtyard. That is a project that is currently in design as well. That project is estimated at $187,000, but again, we're hoping to have that completed prior to a bond. So for building envelope, that subtotal is $368,000, but again, we're using some funds the district currently has set aside to try and get that bigger project done, so that would reduce that overall allotment. Generators, this is either installing a generator or replacing an existing generator. $886,000. Site work at the high school, Forest Park in Hamilton, just over $581,000. We are addressing, under the site work at Hamilton again, the entire recommendation was to remove and replace fencing on the entire property of the school. We are actually doing an addition of fencing, that was considered part of this, to enclose the playground area. So this item will be partially complete. And then the building management systems are the final items, coming in at just over $5 million. So I know back in I don't know if it was late fall or early December, we did a similar exercise where we tried to capture what our most important projects are. Again, not knowing the estimated cost of what the work at Whitford Middle School, whether it's renovations or a new building. Also not sure the target of a dollar amount for the bond. I think what we should do is maybe kind of look category by category and see, is there a category that's our highest priority? And I'll speak first, and I started with it. Roofs, in my mind, are just leading to other problems. For those of you that don't know or aren't affiliated with Stony Lane relocated their talent show Friday evening because there was a leak on the stage of in the auditorium at the high school. So it was unfortunate, but it's one of those things where I can tell you the facilities crew is chasing patches.
Mike,
Sure.
2 questions.
Certainly.
But so every single project has a 20% add to it for soft costs, right?
Yes.
So, all right, so, and what's the 20%?
So that's architectural engineering, commissioning if needed, OPM, because depending on the value of the project, RIDE requires that you have an OPM.
And probably contingency too, just in case.
Yes,
Right,
yep.
And then, do you have any, you just said that you may have to push the schedule up 1 year, which makes complete sense.
Push it back 1 year.
Back, up or back?
Yes.
Gotcha. And then, based on the current environment of construction activity, even if somebody dropped 96 million in our pocket, it'd be pretty ambitious to get this done by 2029. So I'm making a comment, I could be wrong. So based on that, do you have any idea what the total cost of the 25, 26, 27 columns are?
Yes, on
That'd be
that
the bottom?
last
On
page.
the last page, if you
Okay.
flip it
Yep.
over.
So then basically.
So, and we did, if I can make one
Please do,
comment,
please.
we did kind of, when we did this out, we did a lighter 25, knowing that there would only be so many projects we'd be able to get. So it is a little more back-end heavy, also trying to balance it out rightly. We looked at it as if we got that total dollar amount, what are some bundles we could put together? Like, we wouldn't have all of our roofs get done in one summer because we don't know if we could get.
The contract.
Exactly. So we did kind of look at 2 roofs a year. This is prioritized based on, like, particularly the roofs, and I will go as far as to say everything on here, we did prioritize based off of need, like what's our most immediate need.
And obviously your most immediate needs are front loaded. 25, 26, 27.
Yes, yep.
So based on that, in your professional opinion, because I rely on you, 25, 26, 27 adds up to 45.5, thereabouts, rough. Would it be prudent for us to stop here? In other words, you're saying we want to try to pare this down. Wouldn't it be prudent just to say, let's begin paring down by looking at 25, 26, 27? Or is that not the right way to do this?
I like where you're going. My concern would be, I need the roofs in 28, 29 to be accounted for. So if you're saying,
Makes sense.
and I know nobody has a crystal ball, but if you're telling me there's gonna be another pot of money for 28, 29 roofs, then I'd feel more comfortable. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, so I would want, at minimum, the roofs have got to, they have all outlived their lives. So, other items, we can certainly look there, with ADA, because I think also once you start getting into projects, if you're hitting certain items, you then need to factor in the ADA. So for me, I put roofs in ADA up top, I put security vestibules up top. That was my attempt to try and bring those items to the forefront.
I mean, getting, for lack of a better word, getting rid of the open classrooms, that's 15 million right there.
I think it might even be a little bit higher, because I think you may only be looking at 2 schools.
Right, I'm only looking at
There's
two.
three.
Yeah, Fishing Cove is on there well. I want to say get rid of the walls, might even be closer to 19 or 20 million.
Yeah, it's almost 20 million.
Okay.
So yes, get rid of the walls, the open
20 million.
classrooms, 20 million. Getting rid of, and again, I don't like that I'm saying these things because I'm not for it, but getting rid of the gymnasium and media centers at Fishing Cove and Forest Park are another 10 million. I don't love the idea, but if you're looking at reducing large chunks, that's $30 million that I'm,
The bad thing is that, and you're 100% right, that's why I'm relying on you, except that politically, the small p, politically, to go for a bond of, and I'm just throwing a number there, 40 million, and it's nothing that people can touch and see.
Mhm.
It's roofs and things, even boilers, and it's not get rid of the open classrooms, additional security, new gymnasium, none of the pretty stuff. That's a tough sell.
I agree, I
It's
agree.
a tough sell.
Well, and I also think too, we gotta relook at the timeline here of where the roofs are getting done too. So this was put together going back from earlier in the fall, right? And now we got a whole new outlook of what we're doing. I think we also need to adjust some of these roofs that we're saying happening in 28, 29, those need to be sooner. Especially that we're saying that those are a priority. We can't be waiting out 5 years when we're saying roofs are a priority, ADA compliance is a priority, security vestibules are a priority. And then we also know that some schools need a gymnasium, and we know that if we're, you propose looking at building a gymnasium, you'd also look at those buildings where they're overcrowded of adding on small learning spaces so you can open up classrooms. Because we also have to think of the overcrowding that's happening at Hamilton and our southern schools, and what are we putting in place so that way we can shift students,
And,
to the northern schools where we can make more space.
and now, if you're looking at this document, when you start moving things to the left,
Yeah.
bring them
Yeah.
sooner, the price actually decreases because
Of
we
course.
built in an
That's right.
escalation in there. So,
Exactly.
so right now I say 29 million for roofs, that's
It's
pushing
less
them
than
out.
we would- it's less than-
Exactly.
And just to answer one of your questions, and I'll sit back in case a lot of other people wanna talk, but one of your questions is there another pot of money? And there's no way to answer that. And if this were a private business and, we didn't, and we just decided how to fund things, and the answer would be yes. The answer would be that yes, you wanna ride this wave like this, take advantage of our debt cliffs, and you go to the people and you say, listen, give us 40 million, we're gonna take care of things, throw some things in there that they can see, and then in 2028, 2029, you cut the ribbon to a new school or a new gymnasium or something, you say, see what we did, and now take advantage of a second debt cliff and go out to bond again. And rather than have a $1 tax increase, you'll have 50 cents and then 50 cents. And so if this was private industry, the answer is yes. But as you know, we can't guarantee that, because while that may be our plan, if the people say no in 2029, now you're stuck.
Right.
So that's a tough one, but that would be where I would fall if this were a private industry, so.
I would also add too, I think, when we go out to do this work, right, and putting out what needs to happen, we wanna show the town that we can be successful with the work we're doing. We don't wanna ask for too much, do too much all at once, but show what can be done. What are the possibilities of the work, so we actually see what's happening. And as I just, brought up the gyms again, we were saying cut the gyms, those are things that we do need in some of those schools, and roofs, and I went through my previous district, you do all the building envelope stuff, and you don't see it. When we did the work and we did the solar, that was something that people saw, and they really saw the investment in that.
Can't do
There needs
solar
to-
if you have bad roofs.
No, you can't. But what I'm saying is,
certainly not.
I'm just putting an example out there of how you propose the work you're going to do. In the previous district I was in, we did roofs and we did the solar, right? So that solar was something that people really wanted, and you see the investment and you see the return. We know all these elementary schools need a new roof, and if you don't start replacing those roofs, it leads to additional problems later. That's gonna cost even more money for the town to get this work done. But if you're doing the roofs and you do security vestibules, right, that's something that you're putting out there of seeing the safety and the need. If you can do a gymnasium, that's a benefit not just to that one school, but it's a benefit to the community as well across the town. So this is in order of what, as far as the school department, we're looking at this of where the needs are. We want just the building committee to also weigh in on this of, do you see the way we listed these as the importance of priority? Would there be something you would say, I would move the vestibules out and something else should be done before we do the vestibules? What are the members of the building committee thinking? 'Cause if we
Mainly, if you're building a school, that's it's good priority, but when you have got so many other schools that need money, they need repairs, it's kinda hard to say, we wanna build a new middle school for $150 million of some sort, but we have 5 elementary schools that need $150 million worth of repairs to make sure those schools aren't leaking on the classrooms, and so it's kind of a tough situation, but going back and forth, you know, I mean, the better investment is to build a new school and have a brand new school and have everything. But when you got 5 other schools that are probably 30, 40 years old, that need repairs, and, you know, and we're not ever gonna be talking probably about building a new elementary school. You know, if they don't jump at, they don't move the town there just to get, you know, to a brand new school, but.
Right, so that's why we were saying too, like, it's difficult for us to put a recommendation out tonight in the building committee to talk about building a new middle school, right? When we don't know what that cost estimate will be, and we'll have that, you know, in a few weeks. But knowing what the costs are for renovations, you know, we're looking at $96 million here, if we were to say we're doing all of this. So 96 million, and then the cost of building a new middle school, a new single middle school, right? What would that be? Maybe 70 million. We're really working with Perkins Eastman on that. A comment I made to them is we need a functional middle school. We don't need a grand school. We need something that's functional, that's going to meet our needs for 21st century learning.
Good roof.
You know, pushing for a middle school that might be a lot closer to $60 million. But again, that would be a single middle school, and that's what we're looking at right now. Do we do single middle schools, and can you do 2 single middle schools all at the same time? And we also know that there's elementary schools that need work, and that's what I was saying, we gotta prioritize and how do we package this together and moving forward.
One question I have about this list, and I've seen it 90 different ways, is what are the absolute musts? And when I say musts, I mean like negatively impacting students' education, costing the taxpayer, like, you know, like causing like big issues. Like I know that you can look at it, but like all of it doesn't seem the same to me. Like I noticed, like for example, on the ADA stuff, there's something about making sure that the design outdoor classrooms have ADA accessibility. That is extremely important. We like outdoor classrooms, we know they're good for students, but that to me is like in that next category of like should, and of course we shouldn't be using those outdoor classrooms if we don't have ADA compliance, so you want all our students to be able to access them, but to me, that is a very different thing than like an elevator not working in a school, right? And so, to me, they're not all exactly the same as far as the must do, the should do, and the could do. I know everything on here is important, but that's what I need to know a little bit more about before I could have an opinion on exactly what we're talking about.
So just about in the middle of the page, there's a column called LEA Assessment Priority.
Yep.
Priority 1 is gonna be your highest, and I believe the majority of the items on here are gonna be 1, 2, and 3s. There could be a couple 4s and 5s, but the majority of them are gonna be 1, 2s, and 3s.
Yep.
This came, yeah, so I am seeing some 4s further on in the document, particularly under, I think it's building envelope, and the thought on
So
that.
I'm just gonna stop you for a second, only because I hear what you're saying.
Yep.
I hear what
Not the
Dr.
same,
Earl
yeah.
is saying. And when we look at the design outdoor classroom areas, the assessment priority is a 2 on there.
I believe
So if
that's
we-
because of code compliance or,
No, that makes sense, Mike, and I want to be really clear about it. We should have accessibility for that. But again, in my mind, must and should are 2 different things, and so like that's where I'm trying to figure out like what on this list is like absolutely positively we must do. And to go back to the example that Mike had earlier about Stony Lane not being able to use the high school gym because it's leaking. Stony Lane needed to use the high school gym because Stony Lane doesn't have a facility to do it in their own building, right? And so that's also when thinking about strategy and prioritization, like what are those like really important things that are negatively impacting students' ability to learn? So not having those facilities in maybe 2 of the elementary schools, I think is impacting what they're able to offer our students. So that is in a different category to me than maybe some other things that are on this list. So I don't know if others have thoughts on that piece.
Well, I think it's fairly common, sorry.
No, I thought you were
Oh,
gonna say.
okay. I mean, yeah, I think it is fairly common for elementary schools to hold some functions, not all, but some functions in our larger buildings for the purpose of just, capacity and things of that nature. But the leak happening was clearly not, something that we wanna see happen, you know what I mean, to impact our younger students.
So Mike, I like how you have everything organized here. My only question would be, how easy is it to also organize things according to, priorities under the LEA assessment priority?
Not easy,
Okay,
but not undoable. It's not something like I could do right now and send to you because of the columns going across the full width. That really throws, so like I couldn't email you right now or prioritize one to 5. I might have already done that exercise once. I've sorted this, as I think Dr. Earl said. I've sorted this
You have
many
a
times.
document
I
that does it.
may already have that as a save, because whenever I do them, I save them as something. I've done so many of them, I can't recall at this moment. But I can get that to you, just not tonight, or right now.
I don't know if I certainly don't need it right now. It was more of just an academic question, because what I do see is that the 1s and 2s are mainly in your roofs, ADA, vestibules, and fire alarms.
So
And
generally,
then there's other 2s in there too, but that's where the majority are.
so generally, and I may look to Inga, because part of this also comes from RIDE. So there's other columns on here that I didn't put on here because they don't necessarily apply, but there's also RIDE priorities. So I believe 1 and 2 are generally health and safety.
Yes.
Um,
No, structural is one.
Structural,
Structural, and then safety.
so there is a rhyme and reason to the 1s and 2s.
But like, for example, plumbing, some of the plumbing stuff is 4s. So it's not all, like, it matters, of course, but like, it's not just like shiny, nice to have things are 4s, like, there's plumbing that have
Yeah.
4s.
What are you guys thinking on a bond?
I guess it's kind of difficult to group items together when we don't know how much we have to spend. Because if I knew we had $1 million, I might go one way, but if we had 500,000, I might look at something different. Right, what could we get in there to be the biggest bang for the buck that helps the most, longevity of the buildings and takes care of the students? So not knowing what the appetite is for ultimate dollar values, that's where I'm having trouble.
That's a good point. That's one of the reasons why, and I know it doesn't make sense, but that's one of the reasons why I said that, 28, 29 is probably something we're not gonna tackle until probably 29, 30, 31 based on this environment. So it would've been nice just to do 25, 26, 27, but then you brought a good point about the roof. So I don't want you to do this, but because you've done so many different shots and I appreciate it. But it's almost, it's too bad that we couldn't, like, to have a roof in 29 knowing that you need it. It probably should have been in 25, 26, 27. But then again, are you gonna get the contractor to do the work? So I'm just trying to think of how to rearrange this to come up with a number. And my gut says 25, 26, 27, but then add in the roofs and move out the open classrooms. And you're probably still looking at that $45 million number. I do that quick, so I can be way off, but I hate passing anything that doesn't address the open classrooms. Hate it, it's just a personal thing. But again, if you look at 25, 26, 27, take your constructive concern of roofs and add them in, and then say, wow, we're a little bit high, so we're gonna get rid of something, and that's 20 million for the open classrooms, and get those out, you're probably looking at about a $40 million bond. I did the math real quick, so I could be off.
And I do know I have it sorted by year, 25, 26,
Yes, which I
27.
like.
So that, I'm sorry, I have individual sheets based off per year. So manipulating those would not be impossible.
But I like the way it was, but then, to hear that, you got something in 29 that really needs to get done, that changes everything.
And so when this was done, this was looking at this entire document as a project. So that was why we,
Got you, yeah.
a little bit of roofs each year, a little bit of HVAC.
But I hate saying, let's go in that range of 40 and you never touch the open classrooms. That's tough, but that's what you have to do, and that's what you have to do.
I do think something we need to think about, like, as a town, is that a lot of the things on this list are for the high school, which is only 20 years old, and so that's just something we need to think about, is that it comes quick, like, when you start needing to do some pretty big renovations on a school, and like what we need to do for deferred maintenance and all of those sort of things. And so I think that's another piece of this is, understanding that whatever we do, like, we need to figure out as a town, like, the long-term pieces to it, because we're gonna be in the same situation in 20 years with if we build a new school now, and then to your point, like, a lot of our elementary schools are probably past, a couple of them probably are past continuing to renovate at some point. I think one probably is there now and a couple are shortly thereafter, and so that's something else I think that we need to think about long-term is kind of what our plan is for that, because if not, we're gonna be in a situation where we're gonna need a bond for schools, a big one, before we have even paid off the one prior to it, and that's concerning.
So what you would normally do, that's a good
Yeah.
point, so I know all cities and towns except for one, and they stopped. We're the only community that actually bonds capital outside of bonds and outside of the school department budget. And I'm not criticizing it, I'm saying, answering your question, that the way you do it is that this is a big bond for us. We did a high school 20 years ago, was it 20?
Yep.
Did it
Well, a
high
little bit
school?
more.
So now we're at it again, where we're looking for a big bond. Obviously, the inflation has changed things, so back then a big bond would be a small bond today. But my point is that we go out for a bond now over the next 3 or 4 years or 5 years, a couple of bonds, whatever it may be, fix these issues. 20 years from now, that debt cliff will be hitting, and you do it again. And you say, so that's pretty much, if we can do this right, it'll go like this, and then you fill that in, and then you go like this, and you keep filling it in, and that's just how school departments, I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, but that's how school departments keep up with capital. And then whenever the state falls way behind, like we have for whatever reason, then they come up with these programs of all these bonuses, and then you have, so you're gonna get a bigger bang for the buck. So while you needed 100 million, because you're getting bonuses, you can go for 150. So 20 years from now, maybe the General Assembly have a bonus again, and so that's just how it works, and that's how it's the only way to do it. You could never, ever budget for capital. No community, the way the state and the region funds education and capital, you can never properly budget for capital. You have to do it within debt. Our debt is low, knock on wood, and you take advantage of the debt cliffs. No school department could ever do it, and the school departments will get 90% reimbursement. That's a tough one.
So if you were to take that strategy, right, and work off the debt cliffs, and you go out for a bond now in November, and let's say, I'd be pushing that bond to include something for a middle school. Right? We can't do anything without including middle school in that. What would be a realistic amount that we could ask for at this point that also includes some of these renovations? And then when would that future bond be for the addition? Okay, I think we're gonna have that timeline of ask for X now, do this work, and in 2 years, 3 years, like what is that time frame of going back out again for a bond for the other work?
So I would have
Because
to.
that's gonna help with prioritizing where these needs are, because we can't be waiting 3-4 years out to get these roofs done and other work done.
So the answer to the
That's
question,
not,
without sitting with a financial advisor, the answer to the question is that we already have determined via last year what $175 million will cost us. And we already know we can afford that. So, and again, don't hold me to this, but I wanna sit down with Steve Mascheroni and have some fun with some numbers, but the bottom line is that we know 175 is workable.
Mhm.
So if we go out for 100 now, you'd probably go out for 75 3 or 4 years from now. And I'm just throwing that number out there, but we know it's workable. We saw it on paper, it's workable. And again, but I could get that for the council, building committee, school committee. That'll probably take a week or two to put that together, but we already know, we've already done a full analysis on 175. So I'm comfortable with that number anyway.
does this committee think then that we should just be going out and asking for 175 to cover middle school plus these renovations, and that way we have the money up front to do that work, or is that not?
I have a quick question. Was that 175 factoring the 50% bonus?
Yes,
into the-
So
good
now
point,
it's at
very good
35.
point, excellent, you know, so that's what I mean,
Yeah.
that's right, good point,
So probably close to
very good point.
150-ish.
I don't know what the building, I wanna hear what the school committee has to say, and then the final say is the council. In my position as town manager, I would love to, I would love to see one of two things. I would love to see a small bond. Let's show the people that we can get this done, fix our roofs, fix some of the things you're talking about, auditoriums, whatnot, and then go for middle school in a larger bond 2, 3, 4 years from now when the environment changes, or, and I'm equally in favor of this, go for a small bond and tack on a middle school. I'm fine with that. And so again, I don't know if the council is, and that'll be the 110 range. And then 3, 4 years from now, you cut the ribbons in the middle school, cut the ribbons to the new roofs, you show the people what we can do, reevaluate where we are, see if we need another bond, look at our debt cliff, look at our timing, and figure out when we can tackle that. But knowing that it may, you're talking, 5, 6, 7 years down the road.
And under that second scenario you just presented, it would be one question for the school and capital.
That's up to the
So-
council.
Okay.
That's a good question, that's up to the council.
And I would be very concerned putting a bond question out there right now that doesn't include a middle school, especially anything for Wickford Middle School, because there's work that needs to get done, and if we don't do anything, then now we're band-aiding, and where are we getting funds for that? And then if something majorly goes wrong and they're shut down the school, now where are all those students going? I think we would be hurting ourselves by not putting the middle school out there right now as part of the bond. I think that is our immediate need.
And knowing that if the numbers come in high, we don't have to put the shovel in the ground, that makes a lot of sense.
Securing funding is a lot different than actually delivering an RFP.
Exactly.
And we have to be strategic about that piece too, but without securing funding, you can't even go out and get those quotes or see if companies are willing to bid, et cetera. Yeah,
So that makes sense.
I would agree with Ken
I
that
would also.
the part of the story that you missed was we did a bond in between, or tiny bond, remember? So we had the school one for the high school, and then there was another one, and then now we're here. And so I think, for me, it's figuring out how to catch up from the 20 years of not doing probably what we need to do for our schools. And so I hear you on a small bond, but I also think it's really important that we address things that should have been addressed over the past 20 years, because we're going to continue to need to do it because we're keeping old buildings running. And so not doing the work is probably not an option, and I do think it's having a negative effect on students learning every day. And so that's another part of the prioritization that I think we really need to think about.
I do agree, though, by not including a middle school in whatever bond we put out, I think that confuses the message with the residents a little bit. Because if we've been saying this whole time, we need a new middle school, we need a new middle school, oh, we're gonna do some patches, then they're like, wait a minute, that's two different stories. So we just have to make sure that we're consistent with it, and there's no question we need a new middle school.
I think we already went out and asked for that and said, there was a need for the middle school, and now if we don't,
Right, no, I agree.
that isn't what we do.
But I agree, but I just hope that, as we're making this decision, that we realize that, the people that voted no, and we just need to get this number down. And realize that this is the only way to fund capital in education. It's every single city and town around doing the same exact thing. It's the only way to do it. There's no way the tax base could ever afford $4, $5, $6 million a year in capital. It couldn't.
Don't some towns in Rhode Island do some creative things where they create capital funds, like with taxes on real estate and different things like that?
Not for schools that I'm aware of.
Not schools, but general capital, which sometimes includes schools.
Again, I'm not aware of
Yeah.
schools, but you might be right. General
Yeah.
capital, yes, and the number's small.
Yeah.
We're talking $400,000 or $500,000 a year, but the answer is yes, but I think that's for town capital, but. 'cause-
Yeah.
And we don't spend anywhere, we don't spend anywhere near that
Yeah.
capital every year.
I see it all as town capital, like,
Yeah.
because the schools are part of town.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have a question. of all these priorities, is there a way that we can balance off what right requires versus what it may end up being a building code requirement?
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
Did I say it correctly?
That's kind of what I was saying, Mike, like, what is building code must do, right? Like, if we do not do this, we are out of compliance with code, or we're out of compliance with RIDE, versus we would really like to do. Like, that's what I was kind of trying to, you used the words that I missed as far as like
Because once
required.
What I'm trying to say that once you start construction, a lot of this stuff may become a code requirement. That's what I believe Mike was trying to say.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at with the ADA
Correct.
stuff. Once you start
Yeah,
doing
there's
a
a certain
project,
percentage.
you have to bring it up, yeah.
So I guess the stuff that is not really relevant for RIDE could be pushed aside, and you can, at a certain point, prioritize what is code requirement.
And not just code, but like failing. The roofs, I'll say it again, failing.
That would be number one, I get it, because without a code, you don't have anything. But I'm saying out of the other items, ADA, life safety, even plumbing. I don't know the schools that you guys are working on personally. But some of these schools, when you talk about plumbing, you could be talking about building code. I am not sure. You probably know better than I do.
So there are some like mixing valves. The item that was brought up earlier, the 4 is so we talk about student impact. The 4, the priority 4 were bottle filling stations. I'm not sure if that's what you saw. So those are something. I mean, there's one principal in here, but we get the requests from the principals all the time for bottle filling stations. Kids don't use the bubblers anymore, the water fountains. You know, everybody carries a bottle and fills them. We don't have those in all of our schools. Our schools that have them have one. I think the high school might have a couple. It's insignificant. So that's a priority 4, but it's a benefit, you know, a wide-ranging benefit. It's also good for the environment. So that's on the list. That's a nice to have, not a need to have, but it's really a quality of.
I understand.
So I guess I had said this back when we talked about this in the fall, that, you know, I think life safety issues, that has to be included no matter what. How could we go to the town and say, we want this money, but we're not gonna take care of these life safety issues? So to me, that has to be in there. I think knowing if we're gonna include a middle school and how much that is important, because then after we say, okay, definitely life safety, okay, here's the middle school, here's how much it's gonna cost, here's how much more we think we can put in, and then we look at the like-to-haves. I mean, they're all important, and put the things in that we think maybe have the most curb appeal, right, popularity, but yet equity, right? You don't wanna stick everything at one school, cause that's not gonna fly either, so it almost feels like saying what's the absolute critical have to be in there, then finding out how much more we have, and then picking out which things we think would be the most, I don't wanna say palatable, but, you know, have the most broad appeal. I'm not trying to kick the can down the road, but I don't know what else to do, because without a number, you can't
Right,
just say,
and I think what we'll do is, we'll come back for the 18th, we'll have the designs, we'll have the costs, right? So that's gonna help us have an idea of, okay, what potential cost is for the middle school. And we'll take from what we heard this evening from the committee about prioritizing within these groups, right? So not just, here's the ADA, here's the site work, but prioritizing within that, which is the most important, most impactful for our students. Like you said, you know, looking at things that are life safety. So, and that is what we'll have, and we'll bring back for that meeting on the 18th. And that will also get us to kind of chunk things differently in looking at the cost of those projects.
And also what you think you can get done in the next 3 to 5 years also.
Right. So the next agenda item I'm gonna table that was on there, and we did talk about recommendation, but we don't have one moving forward. The next meeting date will be April 18th. That was the majority of what we received back for a meeting. Thank you.
So would the school committee throw around the idea of asking having two bonds. You know, you ask one bond for middle schools, and you ask another bond for everything on here. And as much as I don't like breaking all that up, it is the sort of thing you're at least throwing it up to the voters that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're still saying it's a really big priority for us, but, you know, based on what the voters said last time, it's the sort of thing, you know, are they not, you know, wanting to build a new middle school? So do you then say, okay, and these are all for, you know, $96 million to fix this up, and this is what it's gonna cost for a new middle school, but you'd have to stress, or two middle schools. This doesn't include our middle school problems.
That was gonna be my question, is there gonna be an if-then, right?
No,
Because
Yeah,
if the new middle school didn't get voted down, let's say it was question one, and
Mhm.
question two was the 96 million on here, now everywhere else is getting addressed because Wickford's not on this list, so it's kinda like if.
It has to be.
if-
If you do that, you have to put Wickford Middle School on, because you cannot not do anything for that building anymore.
Well, so my question, where I was going with that is, let's say, because I think the other number was 112, 113. Do you do, question one is a new middle school, question two is, we'll say 112, but if question one is approved and question two is only really 96.
Yeah, you can't do that.
No,
You
it
know,
doesn't work
you're,
like that.
I think if you do that, if then, that voters aren't that, I'm sorry, they're not that smart that they'd be able to figure that out. It is the sort of thing, I think you have to do we want this and we want this. But we know that you may not vote for them all together, so here's this bond and here's this bond, and this is why we need it.
I think the problem too is it's not wants, it's needs, like drastic
And I'm not
baseline needs.
debating that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't know if putting all the eggs in one basket is, you know, after they've already turned down 100 and, you know, whatever our last bond was, is the way we wanna go. You know, do we want to make sure that we have two baskets? And that, you know, that hopefully they would vote for one of those baskets. You know, the great thing would be if they voted for two baskets, you know, if we were
Is
able
it
to sell
three,
that.
is it
But-
three though, cause I don't know where the public safety one lands, but that's the other piece of the bond that got voted down.
And I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying, that was part of the thing that I heard from people, is they didn't like voting on everything. You know, so if we split them up and we need to sell it. And I'm not saying that there is anything that we don't need, I'm just saying that if we break it into different choices, that may be more palatable for folks.
The bottom, and I think that makes a
Can
lot
we
of
have-
sense.
We have to,
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in, we do have, school committee meeting at
5 minutes ago.
6 o'clock, so, we do need to adjourn this meeting, but we'll take the comment you made, we also have it on the agenda for school committee.
The only advice I would give is, I know
Discuss
you
as
gotta
well.
go, as you guys are contemplating this, you wanna call, you can, you almost have to look at this as a household or a business. The bottom line is that, yes, we need all these things, what can we afford? And what are the people who fund us willing to, what's their appetite? So, you know, if we put $100 million bond out there in the middle school, yeah, I'd love to have those rose-colored glasses, but I don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling about a $175 million bond, so.
We have a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.